My addiction started at 13 years old and lasted 10 years, all the way until the age of 23. Pretty much for as long as I can remember, cigarettes were always being lit in the household. Like even at the young age of 3, I remember that family members would light cigarettes in my room. And so, for pretty much my whole life, I always smelled like an ashtray. What that led to is that it made nicotine and smoking very normalized, and even when I was like 4 years old, I always knew it was just a matter of time before I became a smoker as well. There also was a lot of conflict and instability in my household, emotional instability, mental instability, some physical abuse a little bit. And just like many of my family members, I too would end up using nicotine as a way to put a band-aid on some of my emotional and mental problems rather than facing them head on. When I did start smoking, it wasn't even regular cigarettes. It was a traditional pipe tobacco called docha, which is very common in the Gulf Arab region where I grew up in the Middle East, in Dubai and Qatar. Nicotine opened up a lot of social circles for me. Given all the conflict I had at home, I really didn't have the self-esteem, the confidence or the social skills to put myself in certain social situations. Smoking at least opened up the door for me when it came to those social situations, a party setting and whatnot. Pretty much became my solution to all of my problems. Anytime I felt anger or went through any kind of conflict, I would smoke. At some point during my teenage years, it's almost as if I came to an agreement with myself. I lost hope for my future. I didn't really believe that anything, I would amount to much in the future. And so my main priority was just numbing whatever pain I felt by chain smoking. The future didn't matter, so I just resorted to self-medicating every single day. And, this form of self-destruction became a habit consciously. I told myself this is the way that I'm going to be living my life moving forward here. In my early 20s, as I grew in self-awareness, I started questioning why I just kept self-destructing. With that line of questioning, I started feeling a bit, bad for myself, empathy towards myself, and more hope for the future started to develop. I tried to quit several times. They weren't really that serious of attempts of quitting. I would last maybe 2 hours, 3 hours before I'd crack again. And I don't really think you call it a relapse, because it was never a real moment where I quit. It was just moments where I try to hold off from being completely controlled by the nicotine. When COVID hit in 2020, I saw it as an opportunity to try again. And I ended up quitting fully on May 13th, 2020. At that point, I'd been smoking for 9 years and vaping, or if you're familiar with the Juul, I was juuling for about 1 year. I thought that switching to the vape would decrease my nicotine consumption, when in reality, all it did was just make it a whole lot worse. It was almost as if the Juul was like a part of my arm. I would be vaping pretty much every single hour of the day when I was awake. The day I quit, I had consumed 2 Juul pods, and it wasn't even 11:45 a.m. So in the course of maybe 4 hours, consumed the equivalent of 2 packs of cigarettes in terms of nicotine. That's how bad it got for me. I walked into the pharmacy, I told the pharmacist that I wanted to quit, and he asked me some questions like, he wanted to make sure if I was actually ready to fully commit to the quitting. He asked me when was the last time I smoked. I told him 15 minutes ago I'd consumed 2 Juul pods. And he was like, it pretty much said, dude, you're not ready for this. Also, the Quebec or Canadian government subsidizes nicotine replacement therapy, but only once every 12 months. And so he told me that if I wasn't serious about quitting, or if I wasn't actually going to do it, that I shouldn't even do it. To me, I took that as a challenge. I kind of wanted to prove the guy wrong. Like, I used that the energy of wanting to prove him wrong as a way to actually motivate myself to not go back. It didn't take 2 or 3 months to get over the addiction or the withdrawals. Like the pharmacist said, it took closer to 1.5 to 2 years, I would say, before I I could confidently say that I would never return to smoking or vaping ever again. One of the biggest things that helped me wasn't just removing the habit, but instead replacing it with something else, which at the time for me was exercise, going to calisthenics parks, just movement that I kind of had been neglecting for the last couple of years. I believe that like quitting process, it's not just about stopping the habit, but perhaps changing the relationship that you have with yourself as well as how, who you identify as. Do you identify as a smoker? I'm going to speak for myself. I felt like a loser. I felt, smoking, I associated it to being a loser, and I was just sick and tired of being a loser. I wanted to make that change. I wanted to become an athlete, and so that's how I made the jump. Is I changed the way that I viewed myself and how I identified. I no longer wanted to identify as a smoker. The hardest part of the process for me was facing some of the underlying issues that I was covering up with nicotine. Anytime I felt any kind of hardship emotionally or mentally, I just chain smoked my way through it and never actually faced some of those problems. And as painful as it was to face some of those problems that I had, I think that's where the real growth occurred. I don't think I would have been able to quit had I not, sat down with some of these mental and emotional issues that I had and really come to terms with them, understand the root cause of them. It is a very painful process of discovering who you really are underneath some of those band-aids that I've been slapping on for pretty much my whole life. Another thing that helped me quite a bit is I called the Quit Nicotine hotline at least once a day. Many times I would call them twice a day. I'd have 45-minute conversations with them. It helped a lot to have somebody that was willing to listen to me. And even though they weren't really holding me accountable to anything, it just was very helpful to have somebody that kind of understood where I was coming from and was just willing to listen and ask me, genuine questions about how I was progressing in my life in general as I was going through the quitting process. That hotline wasn't even open on weekends. I think on Saturday and Sunday they were closed, so they gave me the drug addict hotline, and I was like, "Damn, you you want me to call like the alcoholics or the drugs anonymous hotline?" They're just like, "Yeah, well, like the relapse rate of nicotine is higher than that of hard drugs. People have a harder time quitting nicotine than they do of alcohol or hard drugs like cocaine and methamphetamine." I mean, I don't know any of the stats off the top of my head right now, but they're basically telling me that it's just as hard, or the success rate is very similar to that of hard drugs. That's why they gave that number. The whole process took several months before I was able to really at least build the first solid foundation. After several weeks to months of no longer, first of all, making the transformation in terms of how I view myself, changing the habit, removing the habit altogether. Once I had that laid out, then I could slowly start rebuilding. Replacing nicotine with trading was very powerful. In my opinion, if you want to quit, you need two things. Number one, you need to replace the addiction with something else. Number two is you need a support system. People who actually understand what you're going through, that are going to be there for you throughout your process. So I've decided to create a community, a school community. The link for it is down below. In there, you'll have direct access to myself. We can get on calls. We can talk or chat about whatever it is that you're going through. I can even hold you accountable to the progress that you're making as you're quitting, or we can start the quitting process together. I really don't think that it's a coincidence that you're watching this video till the end. I think there's a reason for that. YouTube also has a very interesting way of connecting people together, people who were meant to connect. So if you're struggling with nicotine addiction, you want to make that change, you don't have to do it alone. Reach out to me, either in the comment, in the school community. I can help you out. This can be one of the tools that you use in order to completely turn your life around. And once the school community grows as well, you'll have access to other people who are also going through this transformation. Thank you very much for watching this video. Drop a like or a comment if this is something that resonated with you, and if you want to connect with me personally, join the school community, which is linked down below.